important nuggets in that presentation he gave. I wrote one thing here that stood out for me, and I'm sure there are things that stood out for you as well. Science, policy, and community commitment must align. These are the key ingredients in order to have a successful restoration of the forest and protection of the forest and so on. So once again, thank you, Peter. We'll now move on to the next phase of our program, which is the question and answer section. First of all, I'd like to begin by thanking members of the audience who submitted questions in advance. We greatly appreciate your engagement and the thoughtfulness of your contributions. We also invite the participation of all of you who are joining us today, both here in the auditorium and those who are joining us online. If you're attending virtually and would like to participate in the discussion, please feel free to raise your hand. And you're also welcome to post your questions in the chat. Now, we appreciate that time may not allow us to answer all the questions that come up, but we'll do our very best. We value your contribution. And any questions that we're not able to address in today's session, we will for sure follow up after this webinar. With that, we'll start with the discussion. I think as I did the introductions, I started on that end with Lucy, so I'm going to do the opposite now. I'm going to start from this end with Ellie. Ellie, a question for you. What does forest restoration mean in the context of Karura Forest, and why is it important?
Okay, thank you so much, Julie. Thank you so much for our online participants and the audience in the room. In Karura's context, what does restoration mean? First of all, allow me to say that restoration basically means healing a degraded ecosystem. That is in a nutshell. If I may want to go further, I'd say that when you talk of healing something, it means that it is sick. History tells us that Karura Forest used to be a very beautiful African mountain forest. Then came the disease, that is the sickness, the degradation that is brought about by invasive species, exotic species, and human interference that is brought by things like urbanization, roads cutting through the forest. Karura Forest is Nairobi's green sanctuary. To be able to restore it, it requires a collective effort that is guided by science, because you need to know, how was this forest before? How is it at the moment? And how do we want to have it? And that you can only achieve if you are guided by science. There is partnerships that is honest, and there is community participation. Community is very key. So why is it important? It is important because a functioning ecosystem, if I may tie it to the theme of this year's World Environment Day, which is inspired by nature for climate, for our future, this forest plays a very critical role in terms of climate regulation. The carbon or the greenhouse emissions that are released by the moving motor vehicles, for instance, a lot of it is trapped by Karura Forest. So for us to have a resilient Nairobi, we have to restore Karura. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellie. My next question will circle back to you, Ellie, I'm sure. We will now go to Edward Munene of KFS. Edward, Karura Forest is often cited as a model for urban forest conservation. In your view, what are the management approaches that have contributed the most to this success?
Thank you, Julie, and thank you for having me in this virtual session. Good afternoon, all participants. Allow me to quickly dive into your response for the question as to why, or rather what management approaches we normally deploy here that makes Karura cited that as one of the most well-managed model urban forestry in the country, and I believe also within the East African region. I'll start by making reference first to the Forest Conservation and Management Act 2016 that recently was amended by Parliament and was assented into law by His Excellency the President sometimes last week. That was on 29 May 2026. That gives some significant marking into our governance structures with regard to forest management in this country. This Forest Conservation and Management Act 2016 is the act that establishes the Kenya Forest Service with the mandate to conserve, protect, and manage public gazetted forests. The same act again provides for co-management of these public resources, and specifically this forest Karura, together with the adjacent forest communities, and for this case, it's the Friends of Karura. Again, the same act states that every public forest must be managed in accordance to a management plan. So what is the model that we have here? So as a service, we have deployed what we call the participatory forest management model, whereby we come into joint partnership with the community to develop now what we call the participatory forest management plan, together with the immediate adjacent communities. This plan usually is a 5-year period plan that it is executed through a forest management agreement. In that agreement, it stipulates the role of both parties. And again, it stipulates the rights for the community based on their needs. And we have a very unique joint management agreement here at Karura that establishes now the management structures and what we call a committee for that purpose that draws membership from both KFS and the Friends of Karura that represent now the community. It's through this model now for that purpose that makes our operations much easier in terms of management of this facility, and again in terms of its advancements in towards the needs of the immediate communities. I want to attribute that model to the success of this facility, and if such a model can be emulated going forward in other green spaces, especially the urban forests that we have around the country, I believe that's the direction to head. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madame. And I agree that would be great to see, to have that model replicated in other forests across the country. And speaking of the Community Forest Association, this is the right time to bring in our operations manager of Friends of Karura Forest, that is Peter Njui. Peter, how has the community involvement evolved since the very early efforts to protect Karura Forest?
Thank you, Julie, and thank you all of us, both online and physically here. Just, I think, very recent, somebody asked in court to be given, a very senior citizen asked in court to be given a minute to laugh. This time I'm not requesting a minute to laugh, but I'm going to request a minute just to try to think, who is this community you're talking about? Because during my introduction, you introduced me as community with a lot of other words, but community still came out. When the keynote speaker, he talked of community also. My colleagues here, they also used that word community. Then let's think about who is this community. Community must be a group of people. One, they must have a common interest. Where we are, all of us, we have a common interest. In this case, there must be some geographical proximity. Not everybody who can be attributed to be Friends of Karura but lives in Kisumu. That the community, this person that we are referring as a community member, must be getting some livelihood in the forest, whether it's physical or just when you get into the forest and you relax. But collectively, all these people, they must participate in three things: the conservation of this forest, the management of this forest, and sustainable use of this forest. Now, the involvement of, I come now to your question, how has the community evolved to become what they are today? We go back and we have three stages of this involvement. The first stage was actually the activism. We all remember very well Professor Wangari Maathai. She led the activism part of the forest. By that time, there were no structured of doing things in this process. But we had some people coming to join her. We had politicians, NGOs, we had students, we had, okay, I say politicians, I see the picture of on James Arengo, David Mwenje, was, I think, MP for Ebakasi. We had activists like John Makanga, community members, and all those. The epitome of this is recorded in 1999, where Professor Wangari Maathai led a group of activists, students, and other community members, including John Chege, who is sitting with us here, to replant trees in the forest. What flashes in our mind is that photo where Wangari was actually attacked, and we have a photo of her bleeding profusely. But that did not stop. Fortunately, in the 2002, she was elected a member of parliament for Tetu, and later on went to be appointed Assistant Minister for Environment. It was during this time that we got to the second phase of community involvement, when, as my colleague mentioned, CAP, I think 285 was reappealed to the Forest Act, which allowed now the formal or structured engagement, which introduced the CFAs, Community Forest Associations. It also introduced or changed the Forest Department to a now Kenya Forest Services. It also now recognized the participatory forest management. That is when the community were involved. The last stage is where the CFAs were born. By CFAs, I mean Community Forest Associations. Our good example, I think we are the second. The first one I want to believe was Alabuko Sokoke in Coast, but our friends of Karura, FKF, was born 2009. And that is when structured engagement of forest conservation with the community, with the government started. I think, over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter. I have my next question goes to Lucy, who wears many hats. She's an administrator, she's a conservationist, and she's also in education. Lucy, do you feel that environmental education is a critical component of urban forest conservation? And if so, why?
Thank you, Julie. Thank you to my fellow panelists and to all participants. I fully think that is very important because environmental education is when you're creating awareness. You're not only creating awareness to the young ones, to the youth, or to the old. It's all bringing these people together. When you're educating people, when you're creating this awareness, you're fostering a community. This community is the one that is going to read the role of protecting the forest, of doing the restoration work, and safeguarding it. When you create the environmental education, the awareness, especially to the young kids, are you not only creating a community that is growing love in nature, but this is a community that is going to live and protect it in all phases. So I feel environmental education is important to all, and it's very important when it comes to the urban forest, because if we don't create this awareness and we get this community, the destruction is going to be probably on the higher level. And safeguarding of these, the safeguarding of these green spaces is not going to be happening at all. So I think is very, very important.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And I agree fully as well. Being an educator as well myself, I fully agree with Lucy's sentiments. Ellie, I promised you we'll circle back. So we are back to you. What would you say have been the key achievements and lessons learned from the restoration efforts that have already been undertaken at Karura?
Okay, thank you so much, Julie. Once again, allow me to pick up where I left, that it is a process, and it has been a process. And we pride ourselves of the milestones that we have been able to achieve this far. Number one, being able to push the indigenous forest ecosystem from the initial 25% in the year 2009 to the current 65% is not something that you can just take it for granted. We've been able to plant hundreds of thousands of seedlings, native, because restoration is anchored on what are you planting, why are you planting, and when are you planting. In this case, is it the right tree for the right purpose, done at the right time, and in the right place? So the gradual removal of the invasive and exotic species has been tremendous. And this success speaks for itself, because as we speak, from the keynote speaker, from a population of 142 primates to 165, that's about 16% population increase in a span of about 14 years. Where else can you find that? Being able to have the people living around the forest feel part and parcel of the whole process, to a situation whereby they have the knowledge and the know-how of the entire process, from quality seedling production, proper site preparation, and the most important aspect of a restoration process, the aftercare. So I want to say that we have achieved much, and we are headed to achieve even more.
Thank you very much, Ellie. I think I speak for many Kenyans when I say, for many people, they think planting a tree is just you go plant a random seedling somewhere and you water it and it grows. But listening to Ellie, you get the sense that there's a lot that goes into it. Thinking about the right seedling for I can't remember his exact words, but the right seedling, the right place, the right circumstances, the right variety, and so on and so forth. So once again, we come to appreciate the role that science plays in Karura Forest and in the restoration of this beautiful forest. Bwana Munene, we are back to you. Now, I think we all have seen and have experienced that there's been an increasing demand for recreation and tourism at Karura Forest. How does the management balance conservation objectives with that increasing demand?
Okay, thank you, Julie. Allow me just to also echo something what my panelist colleague here has mentioned, that forestry is a science, but also you need to appreciate at the same time it is an art. So the issue of striking a balance between our management objectives and which some of them, let me speak for Karura specifically. Within our participatory forest management plan, we have around 5 main objectives for this facility. One is the natural forest conservation. The second one is ecotourism. Now the issues to do with the recreation activities. The third one is on research. The fourth one is more of forest protection and security. Again, our keynote speaker mentioned that for us to manage a resource, first we need to secure it in the first place. And the last one is what my other panelists have just mentioned, education, which basically is executed through outreach programs. For us to ensure that the forests continuously provide the desired ecosystem goods and services, we have gone ahead to zone out the forest to provide now for these various management intervention. For example, a recreation activity, picnic activities, we have designated areas where such activities are undertaken. Within the forest areas, the conservation areas, we have what we call, or commonly referred as nature trails, where people just walk and unwind. Again, we are keen enough to make sure that where these nature trails cuts across the forest, they don't traverse within our areas of interest for conservation. Actually, most of our nature trails at the same time act as management tools. Scientists or foresters will tell you that part of management of forest fires is through the fire breaks. So we have coined it in a way that these fire breaks acts as our nature trails as part of trying to strike a balance for the various needs for this forest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Munene. I like that it's a balance, it's a science and an art. And I think when we look at Karura Forest, we're able to see to a large extent how that merges, that you've got the areas where people can have their leisure activities, and that blends well with the natural. So I think it's very successful. Peter Fundi, I'm still letting you catch your breath, but we will come back to you. Peter and Julie, we go back to that word community again. What are some of the most successful community-led initiatives that currently support forest conservation?
Thank you again. And thank you, Edward, for mentioning